And welcome back, Bears fans, to another episode of the Bears Brothers podcast. We are alive again, unexpectedly, here in the fourth round, as the Bears just traded up to the 112th overall pick here in the draft. I'm not sure exactly what they gave up just yet, as we're awaiting details, but right now, the NFL Network's on commercial break, so we are waiting to see who the Bears end up taking at 112. So this is now the second time that Ryan Pace has traded up in this draft. So obviously he has a guy in mind. Brandon, I hate to put you on the spot, but any speculation on who you think it might be? I'm sure the possibilities here are endless.
There are endless possibilities, I'm sure, but to narrow it down to one guy, I really couldn't tell you. I'm surprised that Desmond King's still there. I don't know if he's got some sort of red flag, athleticism-wise or size-wise, whatever. But I'm surprised that he's still there. And then that was really just the big one that I wanted to mention. Maybe that was his guy, but we've thought defense the last two rounds, and it hasn't happened. So it's really hard to know at this point.
No, it really is hard to figure it out, like where the Bears are going to go. Whoever it is, it's quite obvious that Ryan Pace has a player in mind. But while we're waiting for the pick to come in, I just want to make sure we introduce ourselves. I am the host of the show, Will DeWitt. Tonight, today, we've been doing some night shows, so I'm a little off. But today, I'm joined by my fellow Bears brother, Brandon Hazlett. Nicholas Moriano may or may not be here. He has some other obligations to attend to this afternoon, but he might be here perhaps by round 5, maybe the Bears' 6th-round pick, if they even have those. We still don't even know what the Bears traded as of right now, so we're still kind of waiting. But as I'm looking through, the draft tracker and some of the top, people who are available, I can see the Bears, like you said, going corner with King. There's also a few safeties still on the board: Xavier Woods, Eddie Jackson, who also would make sense as well.
And we were talking before we went live. Josh Reynolds, a guy that you've had in all your mock drafts, is still there.
Yeah, that's true. Josh Reynolds, I had him going to the Bears here in the 4th round of my mock draft. That's, of course, me thinking that the Bears were going to address the defensive side of the football before the 4th round. But that said, I want to be upset by the pick because I really like Josh Reynolds. Really good talent, really versatile threat, and also a vertical threat. Someone who I think would be a great fit in this Bears offense, someone who can help the Bears find a way to make up for the loss of Alshon Jeffrey. But the Bears pick is going to be in any second now as we wait. But sitting here at the 112th pick, Brandon, if you wanted to go one way or the other, what position would you target and why?
I think wide receiver. It just makes sense with how the draft has gone for Ryan Pace and what he's looking at for the future of the offense anyway. So if they get Josh Reynolds, I won't be upset. My guy, Chad Hansen, I had him in my 3rd round of the mock draft. He's still available too. So either of those two guys I'd be okay with, or just wide receiver in general.
All right. Well, the pick is in, and with the 112th overall pick in the 2017 NFL draft, the Bears drafted safety Eddie Jackson from Alabama. He was a senior. He has great range ball skills, but what I see here on the screen, the one big knock was he's an inconsistent tackler. So what do you think here? Bears safety. You just said wide receiver, so total opposite side of the ball. But
yes.
what are your thoughts of the Bears finally going defense here in the 4th round?
I think it's good that they addressed safety position. It's one that I think we all had highlighted in our mock drafts at some point. And the secondary is a point of weakness that I think we all have pointed out at some time or another during this offseason. So I think this is just an opportunity to try and upgrade the position.
Yeah, no, I agree. What I see here on his draft profile is that he has solid athleticism for a guy playing safety. He's not super speed, but he does have enough range to cover receivers that are going over the top. He's really smart. He can get people lined up. He can cover tight ends. And he just, on top of that, he also has experience as a returner. But that said, I don't know exactly how I feel about this yet, because looking at least at some of these draft boards, these projections, he wasn't really up there as one of the top guys who were still available. So I don't know if this is a reach per se, but obviously the Bears were a big fan of him if they wanted to go ahead and grab Jackson here by trading up a few spots. It looks like we gave up our, what was it, 116th or wherever we were sitting beforehand to move up. Wherever it was, we just gave up one of our 4th. We still have another one coming up.
Okay.
But that said, he's 6 foot, 201 pounds, obviously pretty good size. But something to note, he did tear his right ACL in the spring of 2014, but he was able to recover from that. But that's still a slight red flag for me, seeing someone who, an ACL tear is hard to recover from. Good to see that he did, but down the road, it might be something to keep an eye on for sure. But Brandon, do you have anything else up that you want to discuss about Jackson real quick?
Just looking at his stat line, he's only got one interception. I don't know if this is just something with ESPN or if there was actually something that happened with him, but after the Texas A&M game, they don't have any stats available for him. So that raises questions for me. Is that an ESPN thing or is that something with Eddie Jackson? What happened last year?
Yeah, no, that's I would have no clue, obviously. But so what I see here via PFF, Pro Football Focus, some things that they say that he does best is just his athleticism. So yet again, a Ryan Pace pick going for the athlete. Also, he has versatility to play man coverage, and he was a converted cornerback, so he does have that experience there. So again, a player that can play in multiple positions on this Bears defense. He has great ball skills, catches the ball out in front of him with his hands, and he also has pretty good return skills, as I just mentioned. And then also between 2014 and 2016, according to Pro Football Focus, he gave up just 49.6% of completions into his coverage with a QB rating of just 49.9. So obviously, this is a guy to help on the back end of this Bears defense if he ends up finding a way to beat Adrian Amos, a guy who I know, Brandon, you're pretty fond of. So that said, right now, if you want to go ahead and make a projection out, do you think that it's going to be an open competition between Amos and Jackson to be, for that safety position, or do you think something that Jackson's going to have to go out there and earn to take that spot in camp?
I'd like to see him go out there and earn it, but I think it'll ultimately come down to a competition, open competition. So he's going to have to go out there and earn it. Just because Amos didn't play the best last year, and I know I said that he's still got a bright future ahead of him. Maybe this is what Amos needs, is a swift kick in the butt with some new competition in there to try and challenge him. But may the best man win. This is a position that could be used as an upgrade. So let's see if he can do it.
Yeah, last year he totaled 24 tackles. He had 2 passes broken up with 1 interception that was returned 55 yards for a touchdown. That said, something that we need to note, where I just saw that his season ended after 8 games last year due to a broken leg. So
that makes sense, because I also found a report that he had a minor surgery to take out a screw in his knee or in his leg. I don't want to say it was his knee, it was his leg. So that answers that question then.
And then don't forget what I just said about his torn ACL in 2014. So that's 2 leg injuries, which if you want to talk about leg injuries, you know who I think about, right?
I think so.
Kevin White.
Oh, okay. I was going to say Wilson, but sure.
Yeah, no, Kevin White. That's what it reminds me of, different injuries. So that's a good thing that it wasn't the same thing twice, but kind of odd that you would go with someone who has such a injury history to trade up for him. But again, they must really like the player that Jackson can become here in the NFL and how he projects. What I see here from Alter Football, he was projected to go anywhere between round 3 and 5. So we split the difference here with the Bears going in round 4. And that said, it looks like the Bears are going to be on the clock here with 4 more picks. So we might as well just stay live for this one. But as I'm looking through it, so definitely the weaknesses that I see here for Jackson is just that he's a long and a little bit lanky. And he needs to become a little bit more physical. He's more of a guy who's like a drag tackler. So we need to find a guy like, I thought if they're going to go safety
on the team that can hit.
Yeah, that's true. HAQ can lay the boom. Amos, obviously, get that nickname Smash for no reason. With Demps too. So a lot of safeties here. A lot of competition for it, for sure. But overall, I still don't know how I feel about this. I just don't know why you would trade up for him. I think he would have been there when the Bears were going to be picking later on here in the 4th. But that said, what do you think? What's your overall thoughts about the pick?
Even if he was there with the original pick or not there, Desmond King, a guy that can play cornerback and safety, is still on the board. I don't know why he still is. Assuming there is something that we don't know why he's still on the board, maybe it'd be the reason you don't take him. But just, I guess, watching Desmond King more than Eddie Jackson, I feel like I have more trust with Desmond King than I would with Eddie Jackson, especially knowing his injury history now. So,
yeah. So, what do you think this will do for a guy like DeAndre Houston Carson, DHC, who's sitting 3rd on the depth chart right now, in the free safety position, which is the position where Jackson kind of projects, but DHC sitting behind Chris Brzezinski and Adrian Amos, and now you're adding Jackson to the mix. Do you think DHC could be end up being the odd man out and perhaps just a special teamer in 2017 and beyond?
I would think so. I mean, DHC's got a lot of special teams experience blocking. I think it was 9 kicks or something like that when he was with William and Mary. I see him being the odd man out. I really liked him when they drafted him, but as of right now, he didn't get a whole lot of playing time last year, and I don't know if he improved enough to earn staying in that 3rd spot on the depth chart.
Yeah, no, I think I can see that too. I think this is going to be for DHC. I think that just kind of pegs him down to be a special teamer, especially with Brzezinski as well, with the hope of Jackson backing up Amos or potentially taking over. But what I see here, the bottom line via ProFootballFocus.com is that Jackson just has a super high ceiling. So again, I think this is something that Pace is looking on how a player projects for the future, maybe not right away. It looks like we're playing that long haul kind of game here with this draft. Not people who are going to make immediate impact in 2017, but people who project to be solid pros down the road. And I think that's a solid way to go about it. Not sure if I totally agree with it, as I was hoping to get a potential starter here in this draft. But as of right now, I think all 3 of the Bears picks are all people who I don't see starting come September, week 1 rolling around versus the Falcons. But what I see from Jackson, he just projects as a guy who can play free safety as like one of those center fielders. He has that good coverage ability, but other than that, he just has some stuff to work on, technique, mechanics as well. I just don't know exactly, especially with the injuries, what's going to be happening here. But overall, slightly disappointed that we haven't got someone who I think could project out to be a starter here for 2017. How about you? Does that kind of bother you as well, or are you okay with playing the long-term game here?
I'm okay with playing the long-term game, especially at safety, because I just brought in Quentin Demps. Adrian Amos, I mean, as we just said, he could still be upgraded, but he hasn't been the worst safety we've ever seen. Chris Conte. Anyway, I don't know. I'm okay with it for now. Kind of like we talked about before we went live, just kind of there's not a lot of hype around this draft, but I think he's building it for the long-term future here. And if Eddie can improve on his tackling skill, I think he'll show up on the field sooner than later. But that's one thing that he's definitely going to need to address. He doesn't have to be the heavy hitter, but in the NFL, you have to be able to make the tackle consistently. And if he can improve on doing that, then I think we'll see him on the field sooner than later.
All right, so I just got the trade details, and I want to know what you think. So we traded away our 117th overall to move up 5 spots to 112, but we also gave up this year's 6th. So it wasn't like we gave up a ton, but now we lost the 6th-round pick, so now we're down to 1 more 4th and a 5th, and then we're done. So do you think that you see the Bears perhaps now taking this next one coming up to draft to trade down to try to acquire a 6th-round back? Do you see them doing that, or do you think they might just pick here at 4, pick here at 5, and just call it a season for a draft?
I would assume they're just going to take these last 2 and call it good. I think if you're trading away the 6th and the 7th, I mean, we didn't trade the 7th in this one, but we traded the 7th in an earlier trade. It just kind of tells me that I'm not sure that they're really fond of anybody late in the rounds, late in the draft, I mean, anyway. So I would assume that they're just going to go pick here, pick in the 5th, and be done, because after that, the talent kind of thins out.
What I see here from the NFL.com's draft profile, they think that Jackson's going to be an average NFL backup with immediate punt return possibilities. So with that saying, that seems like to be their projection. Do you think that's an adequate projection? I know you haven't done much research on him, as no one had him going in any of our mock drafts, so we're just kind of doing this on the fly. But do you think that is like a good projection? To me, I think that just sounds like the floor. I don't think that's like his ceiling. I think he can end up being an average starter, per se, or a starter in that regard. But I don't know if he's going to just be a career backup. I don't think Pace would go after a guy who he thinks would be a career backup by trading up a few spots here in the 4th round. What do you think?
No, I don't think he would trade for a career backup guy. I think early on that may be all he is. But as he gets a couple years under his belt, we could definitely see him being a starter, I would think.
Jarrett Payton just tweeted that he thinks that Jackson's going to be a nice addition, that he's going to be able to help out in the punt return game as well. So I think he's probably just reading the same scouting reports that we are here, but That said, now that the Bears are going to be on the clock next, Philadelphia is on right now. So now that we know that the Bears went safety, so we went quarterback, tight end, safety, where would you go now if you were going to pick right now again in the fourth?
I'll stick with my original pick at wide receiver.
Yeah, I figured you would, but I just wanted to give you the chance to perhaps change your mind. I think the Bears are going to address the front seven here. I don't know who will be, but I just have a hunch that someone needs to take over Mitch Unrein's spot. The dude had 0 tackles for a loss last year. And if you're playing, the D end position here in the system, it's really not viable to have that guy just produce 0 tackles for a loss throughout the entirety of the year. Then you have a guy like CJ Wilson come in to play for the nose to take after Eddie Goldman, and he had like 2 or 3 tackles for a loss in like 3 games. So someone obviously needs to replace Mitch Unrein and take over a spot. Maybe that's Jonathan Bullard. Maybe this is showing how much they actually believe in Bullard to take that step from his rookie year onto his sophomore year, which is something that we talked about at the end of last season on our show, that we talked about how Bullard was starting to catch up towards the end, how the system was totally different than which that he played in Florida, and just how he had to use his hands, use his body, and he just had a hard time adjusting. But he does have the physical traits, the physical gifts to go out there and succeed in the NFL. So hopefully this means that the Bears are really hoping that he takes that big jump next year. But yeah, I think the Bears need to address front seven either way, at least to add some depth. But
I would like them to take someone in the front seven because I like to live by the games are won and lost in the trenches, and in a 3-4 that includes outside linebackers. So I think adding, because if, like I said Thursday night, Fox said the best pass defense is a good pass rush, and if you can grab another pass rusher, hey, why not?
No, I agree. Oh, man, my guy, Josh Reynolds just went with the 117th overall pick right before the Rams, even though, I just said the Bears should address front seven anyway. So that's fine, but he's going to go to L.A., and I think he's going to do some pretty good things there. He's one of my favorite wide receivers in this draft, and I think he's going to prove a lot of people wrong that he should have been drafted a little bit more before the fourth round.
His success is going to be due to Jared Goff, who struggles to seem to get the ball out.
Well, the Rams struggled in all general.
That's very true. So.
And that's why you draft a quarterback, Brandon, and you let him go ahead and sit and develop while you build a team around him, which is what the Bears are doing here, which is why I'm all for the Trubisky pick, the Shaheen pick, which, by the way, if you're listening, we're trying to figure out a good nickname for Shaheen. We've seen like Mean Shaheen, the Burrito Brawler. Yeah, Mean Shaheen, Burrito Brawler. I see Baby Gronk, but I just really want to find something more original than just panning off something that the Patriots do with Gronk, and that's his name, so I don't want Baby Gronk.
So if a mini fridge. You kind of already gave it to Unrein, but
Bears are on the clock again. I just wanted to let you know. Philadelphia's pick is in, so the Bears are on the clock. So as we wait, now that we're 2 days removed from everything that's happened with Mitch Trubisky and the tight end out of Ashland, Shaheen, I want to know your thoughts real quick while we're waiting. Have they changed it all? Have they shifted it all to better, worse, still undecided? What are you thinking here as we're waiting the Bears' next pick here in the fourth round?
Shaheen pick makes a lot of sense, I think, because with it being Zach Miller's contract year, I think that he'll be a good replacement, and especially with Zach Miller not always being the healthiest, this is a good guy to attempt to replace him. He's got good hands. He's a good receiver. Surprised he's an average run blocker, but I'm sure he'll get that fixed in his time before he's a full-time tight end. The Trubisky thing, I think if he can develop chemistry with Shaheen, that's going to be a deadly combination. And I still haven't necessarily looked at Trubisky's highlight reels a whole lot to see what he can and can't do, but I think still might have given up a little bit too much for him. I like the pick because we don't have a quarterback of the future. So drafting one in this draft, I like that they did it, but I just don't know that the quarterback for the future was in this draft. But they got Trubisky and it worked, and so I'm gonna roll with it. It changes a little bit the more I talk about it. I'm like, I'm just not sure, but I'm still kind of confident in what we did. Time's going to have to tell. I think this is a situation where we've talked about where you draft a quarterback and let him sit, and this is just the perfect situation to do it. So we'll see in 2 years if it was actually worth it or not, because I'm still lost for words on how to describe it.
No, yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. Lost for words is definitely tough. It's tough to formulate the correct words, how we feel about this, especially because they just got drafted. They haven't put on a Bears uniform yet. We don't really know, but we're just giving our initial analysis of what we can see here in a reaction. But that said, I want to let you know something about Eddie Jackson. Just doing some quick research while you're talking.
Okay.
And when he went down last year, apparently that was a big blow to the Alabama defense. And Jonathan Allen, someone who we all thought might have actually ended up being a Chicago Bear, quoted as saying that he, as in Jackson, was the heart and soul of our defense, and losing him is going to be a big negative. So obviously, he meant a lot to that team and to that defense. So I think that's something to look out. He also, like we said, has that special teams value. But something I see here too, apparently, is that Jackson had a ton of on-field leadership. He was the signal caller for the secondary. He was a player that the coaches there in Alabama trusted to make sure that everybody was lined up correctly to execute the way and play the way that the Alabama coaches wanted them to. So that said, he was also with Reuben Foster. I almost said Froster, just like Goodell, because I've been making that joke over and over again. But those two were very close, and that's something that I guess we shouldn't take for granted, knowing that he came from such a caliber defense as Alabama's, and he was missed as much as he was in that system. So maybe this is the guy who's going to be flying a little bit under the radar, who people aren't so high on now, but then looking 3-4 years down the road, they're going to be like, wow, where did that guy come from? And then, we're right here. We know where he's coming from. He's come from Alabama. He's coming off of injury, but he's somebody who was a really good player who can affect the game in multiple ways on defense and also special teams. And that said, I'm looking up, and the Bears selection is in at 119, and we went running back, Brandon, running back Tarik Cohen from NCAT. I don't even know where that is. So as we scramble to figure out who this is, what I see here, he's a small guy. He's only 5'6" and a half inch, 5'6.5 inches. Like the poundage just went away, but he was a 2016 first team All AP FCS All American selection, 3-time MEAC Offensive Player of the Year between 2014 and 16. This reminds me of Garrett Wolfe instantly. Before I looked anything up, a small running back from a small school. So Garrett Wolfe is the first thing that comes to mind, and that didn't work out as well as we thought. He was just a little bit too small to play in the pros. But that said, wow, running back. That shows where they're thinking in terms of Jeremy Langford. I know we just brought in Benny Cunningham as well. Kadeem Carey. Someone's going to be the odd man out.
Those guys are on the hot seat.
Yeah, no, honestly, you want to talk about hot seat. It's Langford and Kadeem Carey. I think it's more Carey than Langford. But Langford is someone who was a highly disappointment last season, someone who just didn't seem to live up to the hype of his rookie year, which maybe was a little unwarranted looking back. He did have only a few good games. But that said, have you pulled anything up that you see that you can give us real quick?
Yeah, looking at his draft profile, we were speaking of nicknames. He is nicknamed the human joystick for his ability to make seemingly impossible cuts. So that's good to hear that he's an elusive guy, especially for his size. That definitely plays to his advantage. Just run right under tacklers, essentially. A lot of cuts and moves are just seamless, effortless. True weapon out of the backfield that will be tough to match up with. Has good hands and is very slippery in space. So he's also a decent receiver from the sounds of that.
That's
trying to find his stat line here.
Well, while you're doing that, I just want to note that our friend from Windy City Gridiron, Lester Wiltfong Jr., did tweet out that it does appear that Eddie Jackson, the safety that we just drafted a few picks ago, will be ready for off-season workouts. So that injury is not going to hinder his off-season OTAs, his going through rookie minicamp and also training camp. So that's good to hear. That was the one concern that I had that I forgot to mention was, would he be ready for the season, or at least the off-season programs, and that way he doesn't have to be behind the 8 ball in terms of when training camp rolled around. So that's good to see. But going back, I'm still pulling up some stuff on my end here. All right, go ahead.
212 rushes for 1,588 yards and 18 touchdowns. He had 37 receptions for 340 yards and a touchdown. So he can definitely run pretty hard if he had 1,600 yards, essentially.
Oh, no kidding. That is okay. So NCAT is North Carolina A&T, which Yeah, you learn something new every day. But okay, so yeah, he produced where he is at. So this is, now when you look at it, we got the guy from North Carolina, and then we went to a D2 school, and now we're going to another small school here, with the addition of Cohen. So just from what I'm seeing, like you said, the human joystick. But the one big weakness, what I see, was what I just mentioned, and that's just going to be his size. But he gets a little bit overwhelmed when he is around a bigger talent, people who obviously are a little bit more physically gifted in terms of measurables. But that said, he does have his fair share of negative yard carries for that reason. But he does need to still work on his footwork and to run track on some zone plays. And on top of that, I just think the size, and what I see here is draft projections around 5 to 6. So that's another, to me, perhaps reach here by Ryan Pace. Okay, go ahead.
Looking at one comparison, I see Darren Sproles, who's a Swiss Army knife technically for the multiple uses that he's had. Is that maybe a reason that you draft him this early?
I mean, perhaps. I mean, I know the Bears are trying to find guys who can play in multiple positions, and especially how the Bears are seeming to build this offense with not having a true number one wide receiver. It seems like they're really going to keep defenses on their toes and just move guys all over and just try to create mismatches and exploit matchups overall. But that Darren Sproles comparison is very nice to see. Much better than my Garrett Wolfe comparison. But overall, I'm surprised we went running back. I knew that it could have been addressed. I just didn't think that was technically a need. I know Brian Pace goes for best player available, so he must have been that next guy up on the board.
I think, again, he's just addressing the offensive side of the ball, not being able to put up points. And, I mean, Jordan Howard's going to be able to put up points. I'm not saying that the running back position is the problem. I think he's just looking for different potential ways to do that. I almost want to say he's a smaller Christian McCaffrey in a way.
Okay, that's a good way to look at it. A smaller Christian McCaffrey. Obviously, not the level of competition was a little bit less for him. I'm still kind of trying to.
I got this video I see here of him doing a backflip catching 2 footballs, so that's pretty cool. He's not going to do that on the field, but it's still pretty cool.
That is pretty neat. I have to check that out after this show. But
I also see that he led his conference, the MEAC, as an all-time leading rusher with 5,619 yards. So he knows how to run the ball hard. That's my only reasoning that I can come up with is he's addressing the point that the Bears are struggling to score points. And this is a guy that I think that can be used in a couple different ways. A smaller, very smaller slot guy, potentially. I don't know how well that would work out. But then just as another backup and just trying to put competition on Jeremy Langford and Kadeem Carey and Benny Cunningham for that matter, because I think Jordan Howard's job's pretty safe. So it's just finding that next competitive backup guy who the offense won't miss a beat with.
Yeah, and now when you think about the kind of player that Cohen could be, and you also have a mix with like a Benny Cunningham and a Jordan Howard, you have 3 totally different type of running backs on this roster that can do different things. Just to prove how different it can be between NFL evaluations and, of course, different websites. WalterFootball.com has Cohen ranked as the 23rd running back in this draft class, which is way down the list. I don't think I need to tell you that, but he did add, I don't know, did you add how many receptions he had and yards and whatnot last year?
He had, I've got it, 37 receptions for 340 yards and a touchdown.
So yeah, that's a pretty good option out of the backfield. He knows how to catch passes coming out from the backfield and doing stuff with it, because you have to admit those 339 yards. Do you see how many of those was yards after the catch?
It does not.
Well, you have to assume that. I would say a good
chunk of it. Yeah.
A good chunk of it would be. But yeah, I think that Cohen at least projects to be the 3rd running back on this roster if he finds a way to outlast Jeremy Langford, and if not, he might actually. I don't want to peg him as a practice squad guy right away, but he can end up actually being a practice squad guy, even though he was a 4th round pick. Just from what I'm seeing right now, and I try to be the most positive guy here, but just where I'm seeing it, I just don't know how I see him fitting besides behind at least Cunningham, but I don't know if he could beat out Langford. But if Langford's Langford from last year, I can see him definitely doing it.
One thing I find very odd, I hate when they measure hand size because after the draft, you never hear about it. So I don't see it as a big deal, but for his size, his hands are 10 inches.
10 inches. Is that
It's a
big?
big hand for 5'6".
That's true. I need to measure my hands so I know where I'm at. But
Well, I do too. I don't know what that, but you see a lot of quarterbacks that are just a little short of 10 inches. So and they're 6'2". So that's why I just assume he's got big hands for his size.
no, yeah, no, that's for sure. But so with that said, what do you think would be his just looking out for his you know, career? What kind of player do you see him actually ending up evolving to be, developing to be this running back who is now the second player the Bears have drafted out of the state of North Carolina?
For his career, that's hard to know. I
I
mean,
know.
especially with his size, you don't see a whole lot of 5'6" guys running around out there. But it would be really interesting. This is a total side note, not related to the question that you asked. It'd be really interesting to see a picture of the burrito brawler next to the human joystick. That would be quite the picture. But
That would.
that's a whole foot difference.
Wow.
Anyway, for his career, I don't know. I definitely just see him being a backup. I think for most of it, I think from what I've read, he likes to try and he likes to hit home runs on every play, doing whatever he can to do that. And sometimes it's not always the best thing to do. Sometimes you have to take your losses when you run into them, knowing that you're not going to get any more yardage out of it. So if he can overcome that, he's got the potential to be a starter. But just kind of with what I'm reading, I don't know that he'll be able to be more than much of a backup.
Yeah, I think backup's a very fair assessment. I think especially with the bulldozing power of the Jordan Howard type of runner who always turns his legs, always fights for the extra yards, is gonna make sure if you're gonna put a hit on him, he's gonna put a hit on you kind of guy. And now you have a guy who's super shifty, very quick out of the backfield. And what I like here is that what I see is that he's a relentless competitor, and he had 4 touchdown runs of 83 plus yards last year. So obviously this dude can fly. He ran a 4.42. Yeah, ran a 4.42. Only 11 reps at the bench. So I think strength is obviously the one concern as well as his size.
But look at his ability though as a receiver out of the backfield. I think that's something that may let him be a starter down the road, is just his ability to do that, especially in a league where we keep kind of bouncing away from running and being more pass heavy.
Yep.
I think that's something that will carry much more value for him going forward.
Yep. So during his 4 seasons at NCA&T, he had 6,564 total yards on offense and scored 59 touchdowns. So it's a player who was going up against a lower level of competition, a little bit much like Adam Shaheen, but was found a way to dominate in that lower level. So I think it's someone who might have to take some time to adjust to the NFL, level of competition. But that said, something to note, because he has what I see here, he has excellent field vision. That might prove highly beneficial for a Bears offensive line who last year at least seemed to create some monster holes for their running backs. Like, how many times Jordan Howard wasn't touched for like 30, 40 yards? I mean, seriously. So if you get a guy like Cohen who has that kind of speed and doesn't get touched for 30, 40 yards, unlike Jordan Howard, who didn't have that burst to find a way to, turn those into touchdowns. If you get the same kind of blocking for Cohen, he's going to find a way to turn those, plays into touchdowns. I think that's going to be the biggest difference. And I think that's why the Bears went ahead and drafted him, to be a guy who can take advantage of the excellent run blocking that this Bears offensive line had at least last season. And we're all hoping that, of course, that continues here in 2017. But don't you agree that actually seems like the way, at least what I can tell, a good way, a strategy to go ahead and go about it?
Yeah, I'm on board with that.
All right, cool. So just going over it, so we had Jackson and now Cohen. Overall, would you call that a successful 4th round, or not?
I think these are, especially I didn't know that Eddie Jackson was looked at so much as a leader when he was on the field until you brought it up. And that kind of fits the kind of profile guy that Ryan Pace is typically after. So I think that pick shows a little bit more value than I had initially thought. And if this Cohen is going to be that guy who wants to try and take it to the house every time, that's a good mentality to have, but you just got to know where to take your losses. So he's competitive in that direction, and I think that, again, kind of fits the profile that Ryan Pace wants in a guy. So I can't see them being bad picks. I just don't know where they fit into the team immediately.
Yeah, which seems to be the general consensus of this draft. So let's just go ahead. We have one more pick coming up, which is going to be the 5th round, 147th overall. So we got 23 picks to go. So we should probably go ahead and end this one so we can come back live to go ahead and break down that pick. But before we go, Brandon, let's go ahead and give grades for both of these. First, so we'll start with Jackson back and forth. I'm going to go ahead and give this one overall, C plus, just for the fact that I think it might have been a slight reach. I think he might have been there later on, perhaps in the 5th round. But I like what he brings to the table in terms of his leadership, his smarts, his football IQ. That to me is probably what I like most about him. And of course, how he's able to make impact both in the return game and also has the ball skills to create turnovers on the back end of this Bears defense potentially. Of course, how much teams are playing in sub packages now, nickel and dime. I think he can find a way to be on the field in some obvious passing situations, but still overall C plus, just for the fact I think Ryan Pace might have reached, but that's just what we're seeing. And of course, his board's different than what we're seeing online. So C plus for me, but it could end up being a little bit more as his career pans out. How about you?
I'm kind of thinking low C, high C minus with his injury history. I mean, he'll be ready to go for the offseason program, but just the history of it. I like that he's a leader that fits the kind of profile that Pace is after. But his statistics don't stand out a whole lot to me, so I don't really know what he's totally capable of. He's that good leader on the field, which really carries his grade to a C, but just the injury history and him missing time last year, I think that kind of hurts his grade for me.
All right, and let's go back to the running back, Tarik Cohen. What's your grade?
I'll give that one a solid C as well. I just don't know where I think the running back position was kind of pretty much solidified with Jordan Howard being there, and they brought in Benny Cunningham, and you could pick between Jeremy Langford and Kadeem Carey as far as production. So I don't know if this was necessarily a need for pick at this point. I think I'd rather see them go front seven on the defense, like we talked about earlier. I like what he brings to the table. Just don't know that it's an immediate fit for the team.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of in the same boat. I'm going to give mine C to C plus. Pretty much the same grade as it was for Jackson, just for the fact of I thought there are bigger needs, but we all know Ryan Pace does not draft for need. He drafts best player available based off the team's valuation. So if this is the case, then that's fine. I just don't know if running back was the best strategy to go with here in the 4th round. But as we talked through it, and we talked about how he might fit as a good change of pace back behind Howard, who has that great field vision, that speed to finish off those long runs. I can see him being a real difference maker, maybe not 2017, but maybe 2018, 2019. Hopefully ends up being more like Darren Sproles, less like Garrett Wolfe. But overall, not a bad pick.
And additionally, just to add, we didn't expect this to be an offensive center draft, but when you can't put up points, that'd be another reason why you want to go get a running back. So I think just add to my point as well as yours to give it a C and not anything less than that.
Yeah, no, I see what you mean. I mean, the Bears averaged like 17 points per game last year.
Yeah.
We mentioned yesterday they only scored 50% of the time that they reached the red zone. So obviously they're just trying to find some people to change that. And I think that's what they're going for here in this draft. So yeah, overall, not bad here in the 4th round. I wouldn't say great either. But that said, we don't know actually until they actually put on the uniform, put on the pad. So we'll find out here come September what kind of impact they'll make in their rookie year. And of course, as time will tell, how their careers pan out here in Chicago. But that said, Brandon, let's go ahead and call this an episode. We'll come back in after the 5th round. So for my co-host, Brandon, my name is Will DeWitt. We are the Bears Brothers. Follow us on Twitter at the Bears Bros, Facebook.com/the Bears Bros to give us a like. Give us a subscribe here on YouTube if you're watching live. That way you get a notification each and every time that we go ahead and have a live show, which is extremely important come football season because we do host a post-game show immediately after each and every Chicago Bears game. Brandon's here. I'm here. Our other co-host, Nick, who's not here right now, will be there as well. And we give you about an hour full of a Bears post-game show throughout the season, each and every week. So definitely subscribe. We're trying to reach 1,000 YouTube subscriptions by the time the season rolls around. We're over halfway there. We are almost at 600. So we're almost 60% of the way there. So help us out if you can. But we'll be back as soon as the Bears make their pick here in the 5th round. But until then, bear down, Chicago.